Joining me live is Dr. Mariam Farida, Lecturer of Security Studies and Criminology at Macquarie University. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk first of all about the trip that Blinken is undertaking. I believe he's moving to Jordan, if not already.
Hi, Jamie. So I think Blinken's visit is primarily to continue limiting the war to Gaza and to not allow it to escalate beyond regional areas like Lebanon, Iraq, etc., considering the latest developments in Beirut and Iran. The second sort of target or aim from this visit is to discuss a timeline for the Israeli ground offense. Thirdly, is to try to also tackle the issue of allowing more humanitarian aid into Gaza and hopefully a resumption of the hostage negotiation, an exchange of hostages negotiation that now has been in stalemate. And lastly, is probably also to try to discuss with regional leaders the continuing attacks by the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. So this is kind of in a nutshell what we could expect from Blinken's visit to the region.
And how much pressure do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is under?
From the US administration?
Yeah, and across the world.
Well, I do think he's under great amount of pressure from the international community and internally as well, especially when it comes to the issue of the hostages. And we've seen a number of demonstrations by the hostages' families in Tel Aviv and other cities in Israel, where they're trying to get some answers on what is Israel's objective or strategy in trying to get the hostages out, especially considering the latest developments with the death of a number of hostages, either because of the shelling or the three hostages that died because of the shooting from the IDF soldiers. So it is becoming increasingly pressuring for the Netanyahu government, not only to recover the hostages from inside Gaza, but also to have a sort of an objective and realistic objective from what comes from the ground defense in Gaza.
And Save the Children have recently released information saying that more than 10 children a day are losing a limb since October 7 in Gaza. So we've got the humanitarian situation and, of course, the hostages as well. Are we hearing enough about the hostages?
I don't think the hostages issue is getting much attention in the last 2 weeks. I think after the 7 days of humanitarian truce, where we've seen a number of hostages getting released, the issue, once the violence and the shelling went back, the situation and the rhetoric in the media and from the Netanyahu government kind of switched into what happens into Gaza and who administers Gaza after the end of the war. So it seems like the discussion has tilted more towards the political question rather than, well, what happens to the continuation of the fire, what happens with the ceasefire, and also the hostages. And like you said, it is a dire humanitarian situation there. And I really need to point out that whatever is happening for the Palestinians at the moment in terms of what they're facing and enduring in terms of shelling, lack of access to clean water, lack of medical facilities and food, this is something the hostages will be enduring similarly because they are in the same geographical space, so they are facing the same harsh conditions. And they are in extreme harsh situations. So let alone, we really do not want to continue hearing about hostages dying because of malnutrition or being shelled, etc. So it is a really dire humanitarian situation for the Palestinians as well. So the number of deaths and casualties is astronomical. And it does urge the international community to try to push for a serious ceasefire so that the negotiation can resume.
We have run out of time, but I did want to quickly ask you, with your criminology and terrorism expertise, what do we need to look out for in terms of radicalisation and terrorism here and across the globe?
So this is something that it is very much a thing that the terrorist networks can capitalize on. And here, what we're talking about is a specific grievance that is happening across the world, specifically in the Middle East, where the international community is seen, or some Western governments is seen, as standing idle. So some of these terrorist networks will be looking at this and to try to capitalize the narrative where, the us versus them narrative or the global war against Muslims narrative, etc. So the one thing that we're noticing in the online sphere and the online space is the continuing discussion around the disappointment, the frustrations by young men and women from different backgrounds with their governments. And this is something where the terrorist networks will try to tap on and capitalize and try to use it to mobilize them to say, well, there's a problem in the government is where you are. And this is where we can offer a better alternative and a way to offer a solution. So the one thing to look for is that indication of a switch between, yes, I am entitled to express my my frustration, my political views, etc. But once that opinion tilts to I need to do something in order to solve this, and that thing becomes using violence, this is something that we need to look for, especially in a community like Australia, where it houses communities from both sides of the conflict. You have a very big Arab and Palestinian community, and you also have a very big Jewish Israeli community. So that will reflect in the community cohesion inside Australia, and this is something that we need to look for.
Dr. Mariam Farideh, really appreciate your time and expertise today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.